Oh, how about Wild About the Grasslands? On the bottom. 2007?
Yep.
Isn't that same
Same. Did you write that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I can talk about it, but yeah, in that time period, in partnership with the Empire Ranch Foundation, we started youth education program under the Hands on the Land initiative called Wild About the Grasslands, which we've been continuing to do since that point.
Just add a comment about why this little thing I feel is significant. The lessons learned that I didn't put down there, this Wild About the Grasslands, really marked the beginning of when youth started becoming involved in this area, started becoming exposed to this natural resource. Even the school kids in Elgin and Patagonia really didn't explore Las Cienegas or use it at all. And so that was a great initiative, and knowing that they started back then, they are now entering into adulthood where they become voting members of the community and youth leaders. And so I think that's kind of the beginning of an era of having the youngsters involved in their own lessons.
Somebody has, in 2009, the black-tailed prairie dog reintroduction. Was that you, Trevor?
Mm-hmm.
And just as a point, back in the 1950s, right around that time in the 1950s was when the pronghorn left southern Arizona and prairie dogs were completely extirpated, black-tailed prairie dogs from the state of Arizona. So first time they were back was in 2009 with that reintroduction. I think I have anything else. Oh, and then about that same time, this is a good time, that's about the first time that we started getting documentation of turkeys appearing from the Game and Fish's reintroductions in the mountains. And
A couple things you missed here.
Yeah, I'm
In
sure I did, 'cause there's a
07,
get-
08, the Nature Conservancy produced the riparian report, which is a great report. A little bit earlier than that, Bob Steidel started his long-term bird studies out there.
And Heather, do you want to talk about the mesquite work? When you want me to go? Okay, so we said 2006 was when BLM, as part of the plan implementation, started doing the mechanical removal of mesquite in the upland grassland areas for restoration, culminating really in eras, 2010, we had the stimulus funding and were able to do nearly 1,000 acres of mesquite removal, also about 3,000 acres of cultural resource work, where we just got a whole bunch of new information about the significance and extent of archaeological resources, cultural resources on Las Cienegas. And that mesquite work it's a work in progress, and it continues, and Heather's now the lead on that, so.
And associated with that, I think from my memory, I was very, very peripherally involved. I helped one day. Bob Steidel and his students were doing small mammal surveys associated with the mesquite
They
work.
did a couple years,
I think
yeah.
in 2008.
I've got in around 2007, crayfish were discovered at Klein Pond. Klein Pond is at the far south end of the NCA and had just been acquired because it had historically been a problem spot for aquatic species being dumped, and major threat to Cienega Creek, as species from there could easily overflow into the creek headwaters. And lessons learned were that it reinforced what we already knew, that watershed problems there's a lot of things to address on private property surrounding the NCA, that the things uphill end up downhill. And that was just another lesson learned.
Kelly?
Yeah, so I can't remember if I think I put 2009, but I'm pretty sure it was 2008. The city of Patagonia adopted the new adequate water supply rule, meaning that any new developments in the city had to prove a 100-year water supply. So I have to double check the actual, and because I'm standing up here, in 2010, the Arizona Department of Water Resources released the Arizona Water Atlas, which included information for the whole state, but also compiled information for the watershed as well, from a whole bunch of different sources, including the USGS, ADEQ, ADWR, and put it in one place.
And I springboard off that to 1931. It has to do with water rights, and I think this is an important point. You know, we talked about legislation, and I was thinking, well, I missed something that I just read the other day. And in 1931, there was the Arizona Cotton decision, I believe it was, and what that was based on is hydrology, and it was a legal analysis of hydrology coupled with what people do. That was presented to the Supreme Court, but that information was in a book from 1912. So they took information from 1912 and the Supreme Court made a decision. Basically, the decision was you couldn't understand the implications of taking groundwater on surface water. And what they left out was the element of time. Since it may take years, we know now, it may take years for a groundwater withdrawal to show up in surface water. They didn't know that, and the Supreme Court was not taking that into account. So since a few months of pumping, if you couldn't show an effect in a few months, there was no effect. So we have this bifurcated system, they like to call it. In other words, it gives all the rights to a groundwater withdrawal and no rights to surface water. So if you have a surface water and you have a certificate that says that you got a priority date, that will only help against other surface water diverters, not against groundwater diversions. Because of that, there's really no protection in the state of Arizona for surface water in reality in the court systems. Only if there's a surface water diverter that's got a later priority date, then you're protected from them. But that's, in today's world, that's a very rare situation. It's all groundwater withdrawal that's causing impacts now.
One other thing that Jeff mentioned that everybody's forgotten, there have been a series of Gila River decisions, and the last one was written by George Druke, who was of Bill Druke, of the appellate court, because all the Supreme Court justices had conflicts. But he did finally connect groundwater with surface water. It's been, that decision has been ignored consistently. But there is a legal opinion that connects the two, and somehow we need to start pulling that out again. I haven't read it in several years. That was about 2004, I think.
The way it's intended to be used is through the adjudication process for the Gila River, but there's no funding to follow up on the adjudication process on the Gila River anymore. So it's in abeyance until the state of Arizona allocates more more money to ADWR and gets that back in progress. But there's actually, if you talk to lawyers, there's really no interest in solving it because it would tip the apple cart.
And it's because everybody has a conflict of interest.
It has to do with prior existing private property rights, and you'd have to compensate people. And so the state of Arizona would probably have to come up with billions and billions of dollars to compensate people if they made a decision that changed the way water's being used.